Good afternoon, everyone. It's Douglas coming to you from Cape Town, and today we are talking to JL in Columbus, Ohio. How are you doing, JL?
What's going on? I'm great, man. How are you?
Yeah, very good. So we've just been doing a quick catch-up, and we'll get to your story and we'll get to what you do and all that crazy stuff. But about a month ago, you asked me if I would read a book called Driven. And it was about meditation and shooting long range. And you went off and met with the man who designed the program and went and shot some rifles. So tell us about that.
Yeah, it was, I read the book, obviously, and through a friend was able to connect with the author. And
his name is Douglas Brackmann.
Yep, Douglas Brackmann. So, and I connected with the author and we had talked, and once I read the book, I saw so much correlation with obviously what we teach in Be Activated, and it resonated with me so much, and the driven part of it. I mean, for me, my entire life, it's just things have been different, and this was a book that said, hey, genetically these things are actually different in this population of people. And it's not that it's wrong or that it's bad. It's just you're literally not designed for this environment that has now been created. It's interesting because
which is kind of cool, isn't it? Because basically it says you spent your entire life believing that you didn't fit in and didn't belong and not fully understanding how wacky this world is. And then someone comes along and says, but that's your design. And actually there are a whole group of us, in fact, 10% of the world, who believe we don't belong. And so, well, so you do belong. There is a pack out there somewhere. That's cool.
Well, yeah. And I think the amazing part, and so much of it resonated with me, right, is that, right, the most of the world is a herd mentality. And it's this, it's a herd of gazelle mentality. Well, 10% are wolves. And the way he defines that is basically with, farmers and hunters. Well, to me, the analogy that resonates with me even better than farmers and hunters is that herd of gazelles and the wolves. Because when danger comes to a herd of gazelles, they scatter, they go their individual ways, and they hope they don't get eaten, right? So one of their friends get eaten, they're like, woo, glad it wasn't me.
Glad it wasn't me.
Right. However, a bear attacks a pack of wolves, they don't scatter, they kill the fucking bear, right? That's the thing. And that's always been my mentality, right? And it was hard for me to understand, someone gets in a fight and someone else, I can remember vividly.
Well,
it's
so that whole game of you don't have it in you to walk away. So when
yeah.
And so, can you imagine if you were a firefighter and you had the scatter mentality? You wouldn't be so good at it. You're the one that actually has to run into the building, the burning building. So you really, you're required to, like, it's not right, it's not wrong, but there is a wiring in there. I'm doing my brain's going because I suddenly remembered a story. There's a surf spot nearby called Dunes, and Dunes, it's a 4-kilometer walk to get to it from either side. So there's no easy access. And there are about 20 surfers out, and a very, very large shark swam through the lineup, but it seemed to be targeting one specific surfer. And some kid squeals and goes in, and all the other surfers recognized in that moment that the shark was targeting one surfer. And these crazy guys did exactly that. They made a circle around him. This shark was a 5 or a 6 meter shark. It's frigging ginormous. And these guys overrode their instinct to get, to run on water and get to safety, to actually notice that there was someone being targeted, a victim, that the bear wanted that wolf, and they were splashing the water around and surrounding this guy, and eventually the shark left. And it's been written up quite a lot because it's such a, your normal instinct that you're told there's a shark in the water, get out, not let's go around, surround that person. But suddenly I'm looking at that story differently because different wiring.
Well, and after doing the shooting meditation retreat and spending some great time with Douglas Brackmann, my understanding, obviously I read the book, I asked you to read the book, you did as well, and we've had some good discussion on that. But obviously, it's just like anything else, right? And you hear this all the time, right? People, oh yeah, I know Be Activated, I watched the DVD, right? No, unless you've been to several clinics, you don't really know. But anyways, and that's kind of, I think
you summarized that beautifully after Columbus, because you had done the initial Be Activated. You obviously the driving force, a big driving force with RPR, and then you organized the 4 days for me in Columbus. And you started almost sitting there going, yeah, maybe I should help you, Doug. I can be an assistant. And at the end, you're like, oh crap. I thought I knew this much, and now I realize I know this much. And maybe it's
and that was actually,
and that's friggin' such a cool thing, because that's what I try and tell people. I'm not sitting here going, I know all of this. I go, you know what? The chances are I probably know about this much. I can only share that much. But what's exciting is there's this much out there.
Well, I think, that was my third clinic, because I did the one in Minnesota and then the one in Chicago and then brought you to Columbus. So that was actually my third time with you. And so, when you do stuff in person, it's just like anything else, right? You're going to pick up so much more stuff. Things are going to resonate differently, I think. And that's one of the things. So what's interesting is you talk about that story with the shark. And to me, with my understanding now, I actually think that, we say these things, that story gets written up and they say, and these guys overrid their instinct. But to me, they didn't. They actually lived out what's in their DNA, that genes are expressed differently. And for them to run and hide from that shark, that would have been overriding their DNA.
Oh, very nice. Absolutely.
Because what's in them is to come and circle and protect each other. And that's the thing that's hard written. And, I was about 17 years old, and I'll never forget this. I was with two friends, and there was a group of guys, and this group of guys, about 5 or 6 guys, and they ended up, whatever, you're a teenager, but so they ended up picking a fight with my one buddy, and my buddy starts fighting. And of course, immediately I run over and I'm just throwing punches and kicking guys. And there's 5 or 6 guys, and we have another friend with us. And I'll never forget this. After I knocked out like the first 2 guys, I'm feeding this dude, and I'm looking at the other dude who was another friend of ours. He wouldn't come in and help. And I'm beating the crap out of these guys, and I'm screaming at him. And I'm like, when I get done here, I'm whooping you. Because like, to me, like, you not coming in, that was like the worst offense ever. Like, at that point, that kid, from that day on, like, I got done beating up the crowd. I ran over, punched him in the face, never talked to that kid again. Like, to me, there was no bigger violation than not coming and helping, right? He went to Gazelle. He's like, oh my God, we're outnumbered. I'm glad I'm not getting punched. Well, he did get punched just by me, because I was so mad that he didn't help, right? And so,
so now that you have greater understanding that he was actually being true to himself in that moment, you're going to have to look him up now and find a way to conjure up an apology now that you have greater understanding. That's what I heard you say, which is why you shared the story, not just to scare the crap out of everyone, that you can beat the hell out of everyone.
Well, I think, so this is interesting. I think that at this point now, right, I would just never be friends with that person, right? Because to me, I want to surround myself with other driven people that when things go down, they're going to be there. And that's one of the things, is that it doesn't work on a relationship standpoint for me to be friends with a guy who, if there's a problem, and obviously at this point in my life, that's obviously I'm not in those situations really anymore, but I think that's the interesting part is, even just ADD, right? My entire life, people have said, oh, you have ADD, and I've, tried different medications at different points. And that's one of the things he says in the book. When you're a hunter, you're constantly you're vigilant, looking for danger, you're occipital lobe driven. And
Well,
for you,
and really important here, it's because he says, which we very much agree with, is you have an underlying belief that says, I am never safe. And if
right,
I'm never safe,
100%.
I can never switch off. Therefore, I have to remain vigilant at all times. So we always want to bring it back into the language we understand. And when through his process, he creates structures and protocols, it's about creating a framework that kind of gives you a level of certainty that you can trust because it's repeatable. So there's a trust that comes in it, which creates a sense of safety, which can then override the other belief that says I am not safe. So you can actually put down that hyper vigilance, and I think that the big thing is that if you have the hyper vigilance, but you can calm it, now it becomes a tool. If you have hypervigilance that drives you, well, there's a guy that I worked with. He used to work with the England rugby team, and we worked with a rugby team together, Dave Allred. And he had the coolest term about it was about stress, but it was fighter pilots. And he said there's a certain G-force that the fighter pilot goes through where they lose control, and you're not flying the plane is flying you. And I'm just getting it. You helping me pull in the book, because if you stay in hypervigilance, it can drive you. It can be flying you. Whereas if you can pull back, you can allow that to you sit back and you go, I'm hypervigilant and I'm in the most friggin' fastest fighter jet in the friggin' world, and I'm cruising, baby.
And that's so I love the way you put that, because it's such a great analogy and translation of it, because that's what he says is that, with the rifle shooting, what I loved was he says, this is the process, follow the process. And, you can't get up in your head, you can't get in your body, you have to stay in the process. And it's that same thing you're talking about with flying the jet. And what's amazing is that process, what happens is you shoot at 200, 300, 400, 500 yards. So that process, it's interesting, as that distance starts growing, now all of a sudden your head starts to say some things, your body starts to say some things, and you have to stay kind of out of both of those things and above both those things, and the process.
You don't want to be looking around seeing what everybody else is doing, because then your ego jumps in and takes over the whole show.
Yeah, and that's the thing he says, is that if driven people follow the process, then they can take over the world. It's just that a lot of times, right, it's that fighter pilot in that jet. If you're sitting back and you're under control and you're vigilant, you're taking over the world, right? You can defeat anybody. If the plane starts controlling things, we might crash, right? And that's what happens.
I'm having Kenny Loggins going in my head. Yeah. We're going into the danger zone, baby.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, and that's what he basically says. A lot of driven people, because they don't have a process and an understanding for how they work, they do end up crashing themselves, right? And it looks, right, just like the guy flying the plane. He doesn't want to crash, but once the plane takes over, it might happen. And that's kind of that whole piece. And so, to me, one of the most interesting things that came out, and I didn't understand going in, and just so people understand the meditation side, because there's so many forms of meditation, and there's obviously
there are many things. There's meditation to take you up, take you down, zone you out, zone you in. This one is about finding your, it's an open eye meditation, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is about, and so he's done a lot of research on different kinds of meditation. I haven't done research, but I can give you personal experiences. I've gone through transcendental meditation training, gotten my mantra, and that's eyes closed mantra meditation. And when I do it, and I had been doing that regularly, and when I would do it, I would feel relaxed and, almost I took a little nap kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
With eyes open meditation, it's 100% about being in the present. And what because driven people are occipital lobe dominant, being able to see and be in the present and know that your environment is safe is key to actually being able to get the meditation benefits that they do studies on. And I found one of the interesting things he said was, everyone talks about meditation, but the people who are doing research on meditation, writing books on meditation, are farmers doing studies on other farmers. So yeah, it's great for them to get those benefits, but you're different, which means you have to meditate different to get the results that everyone else is getting.
If I am extracting from this, this is what I get, and this is what I would always say to people, is you need to find the thing that works for you. That's why there's no one answer for anything. There can be principles, there can be frameworks that remain the same, but kind of like we don't use the same language of an athlete as we use with our 90-year-old granny. Even though the principles we're going to apply will be the same, we're going to adjust and adapt according to their need, where they are in life, what is their need, what do they want to achieve. So there are a whole lot of things. I just want to read you something. This is from a toilet wall. Yesterday, I took a photo.
I find that's where the best advice in life comes from.
Absolutely, and it's just the end of this, and it says to pay attention. This is our endless and proper work. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. It jumped out at me, so I had to take the photo. But it's kind of being present, being here and now is the most astonishing place we can be, even when there is a world of chaos going on around us.
Well, I think it was interesting because, he's been, I forget when he got his PhD, but 25 years or whatever. And it's funny because he goes, this mindfulness stuff, I laugh because every couple, 3 to 5 years, mindfulness becomes important. And then everyone forgets about it. Why? Because it's fucking hard. And so people stop talking about it because they think it's cool until they realize this is really hard. And then it comes up again.
And then somebody finds another buzzword. They change the language a little bit, make it sound new, shiny, and go, and we have an app. But the thing is, the difficulty in what he does is you need a shooting range, and you actually need his skill set to help, because I think the thing that you said before we started recording, which he gives you feedback and he holds a space for you to kind of deal with the shit that he exposes.
Well, yeah, I mean, right. Yeah. The cool thing, it was a wonderful experience for me. I had a different understanding coming, obviously, through the Be Activated lens. It gave me an understanding of again, high level, right? What are we doing here? And he does. He sits there, he holds space, and he watches your pattern when you're shooting the rifle. Now, obviously, you need a lot of experience to understand what people do with a rifle and patterns. What I saw from my lens when people laid down was I could see where they were holding tension in their body when shit gets a little real, right? When you're shooting at a target far away. And so it was really cool to watch how he did that. And, he held that space. Once you shot, based on how you shot, then he basically called out whatever your shit was.
High fives you or he ignores you. Yeah.
Yeah, he calls out your stuff in your pattern.
It's how you create a safe space. Punish those who do badly. Like all good coaches out there. No, but you see that come on, you're in the world of, you're dealing a lot with coaches and trainers and the thing is that everyone is your friend when it's all going good. But actually the time to really be holding the space is at that point of failure, to go, that's awesome. Now we know you failed. What the hell are we going to do about it? What are we going to do? Not, I want you to. What are we going to do about it? That's space holding.
Well, and you know, I think some of the things that, and part of the reason I enjoyed it so much is obviously I could see so many similarities. Obviously, right, this is a much different lens of the human
Yeah.
body. The way I look at it is, you know, be activated really coming through the body. He's a psychologist, so for him, he's coming through the mind, right? But again, mind and body are one, so you know, we can affect that chain either way. And one of the most interesting things, you know, and obviously it's a belief I have in life for anything, you know, you learn from your failures, not your successes. And that was, you know, a thing he said a lot to people, right? You learn from your misses, not the ones you make, right? And that's kind of part of exactly what you said. When things are going good, it's easy for everyone to celebrate, right? When things are going bad, it's what we do in those times that really show our patterns. And that's what I thought was cool is we start at 200, you know, you learn the process, start 200, 300, 400, 500. And 500, you know, I mean, that's, you know, takes Navy SEALs a month to get 50% at 500 yards, right? It's not an easy shot.
He's saying
And
today's the day.
yeah, and let's do it. If you've never shot a rifle. Yeah. And so I think the one thing that came out of there was a lot that I learned, and obviously I'm taking away and relating things to be activated and looking at the patterns. And it was really cool experience for me. I think more so probably than the other people there, because having the lens I have with Be Activated, I was able to look and see what people's bodies were doing and kind of see some things that, you know, and look at it from a different lens.
It would be like poker. You know, you're looking for someone's tell, and that's the pattern that they can't help showing when they have a good hand or a bad hand. And I think this is the cool part about, you know, the body tells you the story. You just have to observe it. And it's almost like the goal of the game, which you've heard me say 1,000 times, is stop looking for something. Just look. If you just look, you will see, which is always why when we have a group of kids and we get someone to walk and we say, what do you see? And we compare that to a group of practitioners, the kids see more. Why? Because they can tell you what doesn't look right or what they notice. Whereas the practitioners, and this can be your coaches, your trainers, your physical therapists, your doctors, your chiros, your osteopaths, you know, as long as you've got training, someone's taught you how to think. And the more we teach you how to think, the more you can't see. Because you've been programmed to look for stuff. When you're looking for specifics, it's kind of that beautiful thing when your sunglasses are on your head and you spend half an hour running around the house getting mad because you can't find your damn sunglasses. It's because in your mind, this is what I'm looking for. And you've forgot to just go, hey, sunglasses. Ah, awesome. Got them. Let's go. And so it's always amazing how, you know, it's the information is always there. And I think that for me is always the thing that I want people to understand is that when you see a Douglas Brackmann at work, or when you see the Be Activated process at work, you kind of go, wow, there's a whole lot of magic in there. And the answer is yes, there is. But the other side is, if you could actually see all the things that were going on, you'd understand it's not magic. It's quite logical. It's quite common sense. But if you can't see it, it's like there's an illusion going on in front of you. So our goal of the game is to unlock your physiology, open your physiology, so that you can see and experience more. Because here's what I have as a question for you. Imagine JL, who arrived when you came to your first training that Cal and Chris had set up in Minneapolis.
Yep.
Imagine that JL went to go shoot.
Oh, I did imagine that. To be honest, I mean, and you know, it's funny because through all this work, the one place I've gotten and the one truth to me is that the body doesn't lie. And people do, right? And people looking at someone else's body do, but the body doesn't lie. And what I thought was cool about the shooting was the rifle doesn't lie. When you shoot, it tells everything, and it doesn't matter. You just can't hide anything. It's just that when you pull that trigger, it is you. And so all your stuff's out there for everyone to see if you're open to seeing it. And that's, to me, I thought about this because one of the struggles I had with the shooting was I had some struggles when we were just before we started shooting. And it was funny because when I missed at 500 on my third shot, I know why I missed. I knew what I had done, and I'd gotten in my head on something. And it was funny because for a flash, I thought, and I was driving home and I was kind of, just thinking about some of the stuff. And I thought about it and I was like, man, I could see myself getting up and throwing that rifle, right? I mean, legitimate. I mean, it's an expensive. I mean, it's expensive.
Well, okay, so I'm like, because we had a quick chat before we started recording, I just want to throw something in because you were talking about when you were looking down the sight.
Yeah, that was that. Chamber, yeah.
And for 10 minutes, you lay there and you couldn't see anything. And you kind of went, oh, that's kind of weird, but okay. And then when you had to do it again, this time with the bullet, boom, your system kicked in and said, okay, and you could see.
It's still messing with me. We talked about it. Yeah, it's still messing with me. Yeah.
Sorry, my take on that would be that the JL that I met all those years ago, if you 2 minutes in of not being able to see down the scope at all, then the rifle would have gone flying. You would have told them that there was some, let's call it tomfoolery going on. Someone was messing with you and someone was going to have to die. And even though I have a gun with no bullets, but people will still die.
Yeah, it was the weirdest experience because when I laid down, no ammo, bolt out, we were getting comfortable with the rifle. I literally, when the scope was powered up, it's a small hole you have to look through. I couldn't see. It was black. I could occasionally see something, couldn't find the target. It was crazy. The bullet goes in, bolt goes forward, and that thing that was too small for me to see out of was okay, I can see it just fine. And it was the strangest thing. It didn't matter how hard I worked at it. I couldn't see it without a bullet in it. As soon as the bullet went in, my body said, okay, I can do this. And like you said, I laid
that. Amazing how physiology works. And I think, like I didn't realize when you'd shared with that earlier, but that literally is what we're doing. It's like, imagine that as we are working through the body, we're putting a bullet in the chamber and suddenly we're creating a connection and a process and a motivation for the brain and the neural system and the body to go, actually, it's time to get this right. And so it does that immediate, like, can't see it, whoop, because actually that sounds like an average day that we're talking about in the world of activation, because that's how amazing the body is. And so it's awesome that so it's almost like, imagine the bullet going into the chamber was somebody finding a spot on your diaphragm, on your sternum, your diaphragm suddenly goes, and you go, whoa, there it is, and it's like, that's cool. So it was initially, because I quickly read through your 3,000 stories before we got on the call, and there was a lot of stuff about angry you and all of that. And I realized you've already spoken now about going and beating, running into a fight and all of that. So if people haven't gathered by now, at some point, this crazy man has been angry and used it, and also had it smash you to pieces in all different ways. This is what came up for me, because we spoke about Columbus. Now in Columbus, we were joined at the hip for about 6 days. That was quite magical, darling.
I was sad we couldn't do it again this year.
We'll get it right. When the time's right. That's how life works. But you remember when we said our fond farewell at the airport? What did I ask you to go do? Do you remember? That face says, not a friggin' shot.
Yeah. Go for a swim.
Go for a swim. And you were like, yeah, sure. And you didn't go home for a swim. You did it the next morning.
It was, So I pool at my house, and there was so much, and obviously, as you talked about, and obviously people can gather, I mean, the way I used to be before the activate, completely different person. I mean, in my life, I would say anywhere from, I'll just say 50 to 100 fights. I mean, if someone looked at me funny, their nose got funny. And so it's just one of those things. And so, I had done so much work, and after, we had spent 6 days in Columbus, one of the big things that came out of it was something that maybe I had known at some point, but had totally forgotten about. When I was born, I was C-section, and the doctor actually stabbed me through the front of my skull with the scalpel as I was being born. And so as I was coming into the world, I got a piece of metal shoved through my head.
You said, "Hey doc, is that all you got?"
Right. Yeah. And so literally, I had stitches, all the whole thing. And, as a young child, and so all this stuff came out, where as a young child, I would, ram myself into walls and throw myself, and so there's all these things, and through my life, and, fights and all these things.
And if someone is listening to this, we just want you to understand something. There is a physiological explanation to what JL's saying. So his behavior isn't, hey, this is just some broken kid. This is a kid who, from the moment of birth, was already in survival mode, was already fighting for his life. And so in that instant, chose a strategy and never let it go. And so everything, and one of the things that if you have extreme pain, the body numbs you out and disconnects you, so you can't feel the pain. So the only way to feel the pain is to do extreme things. And you will, if you look around your world, if you're watching this, you will see there are lots of people out there doing extreme things just to feel something. It might not be good stuff, but it's stuff. And this is what we had conversations about. And so yeah. We went through 6 days, and you worked on the, you were on the table. And I do remember, I think it was maybe day 4, at some point we kind of just stopped the proceedings so that you could have a little warning, and basically you threatened everyone's life in the room. And then we laughed at you, and then you realized it was quite funny, actually. And so let's just jump into the pool. What happened? Tell me about
it. Was so crazy, because we had all this great time. You're leaving, and you say you go for a swim, and you're right. In my head, I was like, there's a pool in the back of my house. I swim all the time. Okay, so except for when I did jump in the pool, it was the craziest thing, because as I jumped in, I could feel all of the water just rushing over me. The sensation was completely different than anything I had ever felt before. And, it's one of those things where I was never a kid who could just go swimming. I had to be doing backflips and setting up, some kind of obstacle to get in the pool. And for me, it was the craziest thing, where I dove in and I just went, fuck, this is what water feels like. And it was the craziest thing. It was definitely, and it's funny because it's hard to, I think if people haven't done any of the work, I think that's a hard one to explain to people, how literally a substance for my entire life had no feeling. And then all of a sudden I jump into that same substance and it feels like something I've never experienced before. And I'll relate it back to the shooting. It didn't matter how hard I tried or wanted to find that target and look through that scope. I could not do it without a bullet. Put the bullet in, and I was a completely different person operating differently. That's what the pool was to me, obviously for different reasons. And it was crazy. I mean, and
so everything like that, what it does, it becomes a feedback loop. And the thing is that our physiology, our brain, our mind, it's like a meaning-making machine. So if in the moment that you're popping out into the world, you get stabbed in your head, the meaning-making machine is going to make some very obvious things. I'm not safe. They're trying to kill me. I'm going to have to fight to survive every second of every day. And the way I'm going to be strong enough to survive this is I'm going to numb out and disconnect so that I can actually be more resilient. Because I always talk about, we're in Africa and we have these big long thorns. They yay long, call it 2 or 3 inches. And it's called a wache bush. It's this long white thorn. Wache means wait a while, which means when you hook yourself on it, stop. Because when you fight it, you're going to get more of them and they're just going to stab you. But now imagine that there's a huge hungry lion that's decided that you're lunch. And the only way of escape is to get through 100 wache bushes. And your brain goes, survival strategy, I can fight with the lion. Actually, this lion is a little more scary. Those thorns are a little less scary. And it says, I tell you what, I'm going to help you. You've got to get through that thorn bush or all of those rows of thorns. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to numb you out and disconnect you so you may survive, because survival is the highest instinct we have. And so I'm willing to sacrifice anything. So it numbs you out, disconnects you, and you manage to get through those thorn bushes. And that's amazing. So you survive. And the lion's on the other side going, that's not fair. You know, I thought I was going to have a kebab. And
right.
and the thing is that the design is that afterwards your system goes, we survived. Yeah. And then it resets itself. And you start to go, holy crap, this really hurts. And you start to heal the wounds and all of that. But the way life is set up at the moment is we don't reset. We don't recalibrate. We don't switch back on. So we then continue on the other side of the thorn bushes as numbed out, disconnected, and fighting for our lives. And then we go back into our worlds in numb, disconnected, and fighting for our lives. And then within a day or two, it's normal. And so we don't even know there's a problem. And so we've got a world of people walking around at all different levels, ages, you know, different functions. So whether they're doing sport or whether they're suffering with dysfunction or whatever, playing out these patterns that we don't know that we don't know. And we don't realize that the answer that we're looking for is always already here. That's what's so cool.
Yeah, I think the one thing that, you know, through all of that is so personal for me is that growing up and really until I started doing the work, I didn't realize there was an issue. I didn't think something needed to change, right? So I've been in, you know, I don't know, 50 to 100 fights. I never thought, right? I just figured, hey, you know, it just, people run their mouth to me and I do something about it. I didn't think it was an issue. And I can remember, I mean, in high school, I was, you know, I would do, I mean, at least a dozen times I should have died because I was doing things that were so dangerous. But it, you know, I look back at those things and it is funny because I go, man, no, if someone asked me to do that at this point now, I was surfing on top of a car. So on the roof, standing up, surfing on top of a car, down a dirt road. We're doing 55 miles, you know, so we're doing 55 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's quite fast. 80, 90 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, 80, 90 kilometers per hour, down a dirt road. I'm surfing on the roof of the car. We hit a deer, right? So there's just these things that how I'm alive, I don't know. But for me, sitting in the car was boring. And so to me, at first I got on the hood of the car and I sat there. That was still boring. To me, until I stood on the roof, it didn't feel, okay,
you hadn't hit that magic threshold where your system said, hey, wow, I can actually feel something. And so it is a very interesting thing when we start to understand behavior. And if we just take that my core physiology is numbed out and disconnected, that means anything normal, average, mundane, you know, like just normal life doesn't even touch sides with me. So it's like it hasn't even reached, like given a little beep on the radar. So it's only when I fall, when I crash, when I push, when someone pushes back, when I'm fighting, when I'm, you know, whatever, creating a risk, and you know, we had an amazing conversation on a webinar last Thursday night with a wonderful man called Norman. And Norman came on a workshop in London, and one of the things that he had been doing was going to Canada, and he was swimming in grade 5 rapids to feel something. And and just amazing what we do in order to meet the need of feeling alive. And so we become high sensation seekers, and there's a whole psychology like test that you can do. When I did it in university, when I was doing psychology, I was like, oh wow, I'm 100% high sensation seeker. That's so weird.
I can't believe it. I'm perfect.
How could that be? And that was a place where I was at in my physiology right then and then. Therefore, that's how. So my mantra was always go big or go home. Which means all on or all off. And there's a massive value in that. But just like we were talking about the hypervigilance, great if you can do that, but can you choose to do it differently? And if the answer is no, then you're not in control. If the answer is yes, I can, but I choose not to, that's cool. But I need to know there's a choice, that I can do something different with my physiology. And without that choice, you are reactive. Reactive is a state of fight, flight, or freeze, which means you're not flying the plane. And it's amazing how, like, I've been looking at and talking to different people around the world who are involved with schools and doing some wonderful things. And there was a deputy headmaster that sent me a message just saying, when he did the Be Activated, Coach B, just so he knows that we're talking about him. He's deputy head, and he said they put the breathing and they've put the activations into the school as just, it's what we do. And so it's about teaching the kids that there is a different way. We're not saying you have to go this way.
Right.
It's about showing them there is an option, because if you believe there's no other way, it's kind of like, and we've seen, I'm trying to avoid the lockdown COVID conversation, but we have seen how much fear that's generated because people believe that the threat is so immense. And so if you believe there's, you're going to die, your physiology is going to play this out. And we don't want to say it's not real, because people are dying. But you need to know there's another side too. You need to know that if you can have that other side, that other option, actually what you've done is you've opened up your possibilities. And we talk about this in the work all the time, not necessarily about what's going on in the world. We have an athlete who always steps left. Why? Well, because they can't step right. So we want to open that possibility, because now you get to choose, dude. You can still step left 9 times out of 10. But on that time where you've got a split second and the game is on the line and you go right, nobody's going to defend that side because you don't do that. But if you know that's up your sleeve, that's going to give you some confidence. That's going to give you some, it opens up that possibility of doing something different. And
Yeah, I think that's why I was so drawn to powerlifting, right? Because for me, right, bench pressing 800 pounds, you hold 800 pounds over your face, if it drops, you're dead, right? You put 1,000 pounds on your back, it can kill you, right? And so for me, I love powerlifting. And it's funny looking back that, I lifted with so much anger and all these things. But when I look back at it under this new lens of my understanding, and part of our discussion today, it's funny, as I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, no wonder I love that so much, because I could die every time I got under the bar. And for me, that's what I needed to feel alive.
And so it wasn't actually about being the best in the world. It was about putting the most weight on you. The fact that everyone was going, oh my God, you're now the strongest man in the world or whatever, was beside the point. That fed it a little bit, but that's not the driver. The driver is, I need to create more risk. I need to create more pressure. I want to feel. I just want to feel.
Well, and I think the interesting part too now, after going through, some of the retreat and obviously the book, is I understand, okay, you have this physiology that was created by these things that happened. And then you just have this innate driven genetical makeup. So you put those two things together, and now you get obviously what you got, which was a lot of really cool accomplishments and a lot of problems too. So, it's both sides.
And the thing is, imagine that at some point, like let's say at school, you started a process where there was a class, I don't know, we'll call it getting to know you class. And it's all about, I don't know, I'm just sucking it out my thumb, but it's a class that's literally about getting to understand more about you, learning to take the learning that we're seeking inward. And so you get to find the answers knowing they're inside you. And the more I understand about me, the more when I step out in the world, I'm going to be able to understand the world more. Because if I'm only going to, like, let's say you're my best teacher ever, and you're my great influence, and the only thing that I believe in the world is anything that Coach JL taught me. And let's say you gave me a narrow framework and it's only this. Well, that means that anything outside of that doesn't exist for me either.
Right.
And the irony is, like, if we did a SWOT analysis, all of that stuff that's outside that framework, it could be an opportunity, but it's not. It's a threat. It's because I can't see it because I've created limitations in my thinking, which therefore becomes my patterns, my physiology, my way of being. And so it's this awesome side of imagine opening up, and I would imagine that when you have the gun and you're looking at the target, there's also a sense, because if the driven is about hypervigilance, you actually also need to be able to be completely aware of everything going on around you. Because if you aren't, your system's not going to be able to stay focused on the gun, right? And so I'm just going to throw in a name because it feels like the right thing. 2010, I had the privilege of spending 2 days with Jack Nicklaus, and we did some work at his son's house at the Bears Club. And I was talking about this, like on the golf course, you're doing this putt with 10,000 people around you. And I said, the goal of the game is to see everything and then choose where you put your focus. And he goes, exactly. That is what I've been telling people for years. And everyone tells me I'm wrong. And I go, how can you be wrong? He says, and the weird thing is, my only answer to them is, I'm the one that's won all these things. Shouldn't you be listening to me? And he goes, and yet the sports psychologists are teaching people how to focus in. Block this out, block it out, and focus here. And for me, there's nothing safe in that. If I have to block out and pretend it's not there, that's not safe. For me, and when you see me, when I teach and I kind of work the room, I hold space. I have to see everything so I can put my focus on you. If I don't see everything, nobody in the room is going to feel safe because too much goes down. That's not, and so I just suddenly realized that when firing that gun, you have to be aware of everything and then choose to put your intention there and your action there. Does that sound?
100%. And that's I think cool. What is really cool. And I think, when you were talking about what if you had a class where you could learn about yourself, and obviously self-mastery, right, is the ultimate of any learning and any endeavor, which never ends. I think the thing for me that's been so prevalent is through my life, I've gone to counselors and therapists and all that stuff. And that's supposed to be about learning.
The courts did have to make you do something, huh?
Yeah, well, And so
you went kicking and screaming, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, those records are sealed, so we won't talk about that. But so the thing though for me that comes out is that the number one driver for me in a personality trait is the desire to win. And so for me, no matter what I'm doing, I'll die if I can win, right? And so the thing is that the body doesn't lie. And so Be Activated is really the first time where I had to see my shit and deal with my shit. When I would go to a class where you talk about this and that, I would walk in every time, and the goal was to outsmart that person sitting there with those degrees thinking they're so smart. Every counseling there, everything I ever went through, to me, every time I walked in, it was me versus you, and I'm going to outsmart you because I'm a smart guy and I know how to work this.
Wow.
And so I never got,
the ultimate
I never got,
disruptor.
I never got any.
What every teacher looks out for, thinking, oh my God. By the way, we love disruptors in our world because one of the things that, like, when I first started teaching and sharing these ideas, I wasn't sharing. I was saying, look how freaking clever I am. Because so I needed to sell you on an idea. I don't do that anymore. I don't care. I'm sharing what we do. I'm sharing what we think and what we know works. And when someone's just sharing, you can say, hey, Douglas, I don't agree. Okay. But if I have to be right, then you can fight with me and you can pick a fight, and we're going to spend the next hour debating something arbitrary that has no value. And so the most amazing thing for me was when I reached that point where I realized I'm standing up to share what I believe. And suddenly it's amazing how hard the disruptor, if you were in the class and you were there to win, it's hell of a hard to fight someone who's not fighting. It's hell of a, it's the, it's like become water. It's moving and wherever and for me, in that realization and that part of teaching was where, for me, the game changed in myself, because that's when, and you also know, I'm pretty brutal. If someone's disrupting the group and it's just about them, then I shut them down. And it's kind of, I think it's for all the good that we want to do in the world. You have to be able to see all sides. So it's easy as hell to shut people down and destroy them. We're not in that game. But if someone's disrupting a space, we have to do it. Not destroy them, just shut them up and humiliate them.
Right.
Because if the goal of the room is learning for everyone, no one person, we're not going to sacrifice for one person whose ego needs to be stroked.
No. Yeah. And it's, I think with part of this that I think that, again, the body just doesn't lie. So those people, and for me, when I went in counseling, it wasn't necessarily disrupting, it was just winning. So I just played the game, right? Okay, here's what they want to hear. I'm going to tell them this and do this. And
it was all you knew, because that was the playbook you were given the day you were born.
And so for me, if someone's in a clinic and they're disrupting, right, I would say 99.9% of the time that who that person is going to be when they walk in, because they might smile, they might say hi, can't wait to learn, but their body, it does not say that they're here to learn.
Yeah.
And so that's what I love. The body just doesn't lie. And that's, I think, the point that you made, and that took me a long time to understand, and it was, for me at first, was the most frustrating answer, is, well, what are you looking at? Well, don't look for something, just look. And even better than just look, just feel. What do you feel like you see? Right. And that part for me is, it took me a long time, to get to where I go, okay, I get it. Right. And especially where I came from, that was really hard, because I wanted what exactly are you, I wanted that. And it took me a while. And it's so funny now, because when people ask, it's, I don't really look, I just feel like, what do I see? And that is where, to me, when I came into this, I was not even close to being in a space where I couldn't feel anything. So if you ask me what I felt like I saw, there's nothing, right? Like, I feel like I see nothing.
Conversation killer right there.
Yeah. So,
here's what's interesting, because in that very first program that you did, that we did in Minneapolis, for me, I think it was the end of day one. I know we went for dinner, but before that we went to the squat rack. Yep. And what I did is I just showed you something that was completely the opposite to the way you would have done it. Not with a big weight, not with anything like that. But what I was doing was I was making sure that I was being like honoring enough to meet you in a place where that's your world. So I was showing you a concept. You'd asked a question, and instead of me repeating it again the way I'd said it, I wanted to show you so you could feel it, because you know what that feels like, because that's a movement you know. That's a movement you're an expert on. And then I'd go, now try this. How does that feel? And it's like, whoa. Well, actually, I do know that one, and I do know what that one feels like, because now, and I just realized it as I'm saying, because there's a place of safety, because you definitely were the expert in that side, whereas me, not even slightly. So suddenly your physiology it's easier to go and meet you there. So instead of me going, hey, I've got something that's so damn good for you, I'm going to change your world, I'm going, hey, do you want to just try this and see if it makes a difference, and give some feedback? And for me, everything that's happened since then, I'm realizing this now, started in that moment. Huh.
No, it's true.
That's very cool, actually. So the fact that you're such a pain in the ass is all my fault. Damn it. All right. Sorry. That was just thinking out loud. Okay. So you know what, JL? I think that's a great rounding off point. So we're not done.
It's definitely your fault that I'm a pain in the ass, for sure.
There we go. So thank you so much for that. Okay. So